Hey friend, welcome to Mountain Meadow Homestead. My name is Melissa if you're new here, and we're kind of down in my all-purpose room. So this room is where I start my seeds. I've got my freeze dryer behind me. I have my honey extractor over here. My office is in here as well. My two desks are back behind you, but I have a garden journal that I created that I just want to share with you today. There are many reasons why I wanted to create some sort of journal. In the past, what I've done is I've taken either photos or short video clips throughout the gardening season to document things like the plant growth throughout the summer, what to expect as we're getting into July and August, documenting maybe pest issues or disease issues in the plants. And that was great because it gave me a video to look back on and to see, on the screen, but it was difficult to go back and find within all the pictures and videos that I had taken the particular thing that I was looking for. So, I wanted to have a place to document things like that. Another thing that, we're looking like bird's eye view goal is to, in the next couple years, really hone in on really growing or sourcing our food locally about 80%. So obviously there's going to be things like bananas and avocados, citrus that we can't feasibly grow here because of our long winters. I know that there is somebody over on the other side of the state that and in Utah that has some sort of in-ground greenhouse and they're able to grow those things. But for us, that is not feasible right now. And so our goal is to shoot for 80% sourcing either locally or growing ourselves. So we're talking meats and vegetables, and we're also working on growing our own grains. So, we source our meat locally. We eventually want to have a meat cow. We can't have any pigs on our homestead per our HOA rules, but we can have a cow and then doing meat birds hopefully this summer. We will see about that because that is a big undertaking, and we're trying to do some research to make sure that we're fully prepared for that before we jump into that head first. So with all of that in mind, I sat down and I wrote down what things I want to track, what I want to journal about, and how I want to keep those analytics at hand to reference year after year. Something you don't know about me is I am an accountant by trade. And so I love my spreadsheets and I love numbers and analyzing numbers. So something I'm very good at, super nerdy, I know. But so I'm going to give you guys a look at how I put this together and what I had in mind. And please, if you see something as we're going along and you're like, hey, you need this in there, or any advice that you want to give as to what would be beneficial to keep track of, I would love for you to put that in the comment section below. Because I guarantee you there's things that I probably missed or didn't even think about as something valuable to track. So let's sit down and we're going to take a look at each of the pages, and I'm going to go through and explain what I have on those pages, why, and how we're going to use them. All right, we have our gardening journal here, and so one of the first pages that I put in here was a place to write down my gardening goals. So things that I want to change for this year, maybe a goal of starting new things in the garden. This year, one of our goals is to cultivate the new garden up at the property, and so I just have a space that I can list those items here. This section is for anything that I need to remember to order or gather or do before we start the gardening season. So This year, I know I need to bring in some compost up at our property just because we have some pretty heavy clay soil, and so we need to get that worked in to help break it up. I know that I had a hose at the end of the gardening season that needs replaced for here at our house, as well as I know I'm gonna need some more frost cloth, just those type of things. I need to go through and do all my checks for this section this year. This next page kind of leads into subsequent pages. So this is where we're going to document the items that we want to preserve, the quantity, and what method we're preserving them by. So for example, diced tomatoes, say I want 50 jars of that. Obviously it's canning, and then figuring out how much or how many pounds of that produce I'm going to need in order to make this quantity of the item I want to preserve, and then calculating, okay, on average, how much does that plant produce and how many plants am I going to need? And then here I can put in notes like, okay, I want to do 50% of them unseasoned and 50% of them seasoned, stuff like that. So I did do 2 pages of this just because I wasn't sure how much room this was going to take up. We do put a lot of things on our shelves, so I just wanted to make sure I had enough room. Now, the number of plants is then going to translate to this page. This page is going to help us figure out when and how many starts we need to start for the gardening season. So I have everything listed, and it's 3 pages long, that we typically grow. I don't know if we'll grow all of these things this year, and I'll explain why in a minute. But here's where the number of plants will translate to the number of starts. And I will start a few extra of each item just to make sure by the time we go to transplant those out, if any of them didn't make it, then we still have enough. What I did is I put this in a spreadsheet on my computer, and I put in some formulas so that this start date would calculate based on the date of planting. So one thing that I want to do this year is experiment. We have a little makeshift greenhouse here at our house, and so I want to get the greenhouse plastic on it earlier in the season and see if I can grow some things like lettuces and whatnot, carrots, earlier in the season before I can put more of our frost tender things in there. So I wanted to put in a expected plant date and then have an actual start and plant date column, because I know that those will vary. I always have great goals in mind, but obviously life happens and the weather happens. So like a lot of these, I have June 7th as my goal for the things that are frost tender. But typically here you can plant out those things around Father's Day. So around June 10th to June 15th. It all depends on the weather. As we get into the first week of June, and even before then, I'm going to be really paying attention to the weather to see what our nights are looking like as we're going on over the next few days. So it will all be determined by that factor, how cold the nights are going to be, and if I can trust putting out my frost tender plants or not by this date. I also wanted a spot to make notes about my seed starting that I can reference the next year, so that I can just continue getting better and better on starting my seeds indoors. So like I said, I have a couple pages of this. The last page includes a lot of our direct sown seeds. So like our peas, our beets, our carrots. So I don't have how many of those or when to start them indoors. A lot of these, I'm just going to plant everything that I have. just so that we can get the biggest harvest that we can. We go through a lot of potatoes, we go through a lot of beans and a lot of carrots and the like. So that is that. And then I'm gonna insert a video here that is gonna show you what our backyard looks like, and we'll kind of explain the pages that we're gonna see. This is the back corner of our property where our house is located. We've got this makeshift greenhouse. We call it the greenhouse. It's 29 feet long, and I think it's 8 feet wide. And then we've got the in-ground garden off to the side. So these squares are all 1 foot by 1 foot squares, so that I can figure out how much room a plant may need or how many plants I can plant within a square foot. And so you'll see that throughout my diagrams. But this is that back corner. These are our 4 raised beds that we plant in, and then we've got our raspberry patch in the back. These are 4 foot by 12 foot beds. Something that's exciting for me, we recently got notice that we were approved for our high tunnel grant, and so with that comes a whole new adventure with gardening and new avenues that we can take with it. But we're still waiting on the state to give us the paperwork to sign for that, the final paperwork, and then subsequently give us the funding that we need to move forward, and the okay to move forward in purchasing this high tunnel. So for now, I'm not sure when those next steps are going to occur. So I can't guarantee that we're gonna have this high tunnel up and ready to go before June 1st. So with that in mind, when I go to sit down and plan all this out, I will keep in mind that this will most likely have to be items that are okay to be grown outside of a greenhouse. So like green beans or potatoes or, those type of things. But the other idea that I have is to go ahead and just focus on a cover crop this year so that the soil can get nice and healthy and ready for planting the next year. I got to do a little bit of thinking on that, but I will let you know kind of what our process is and what I'm going to plan on doing. These 2 garden beds, they are 4 foot by 8 foot, and I did mention them in an earlier video, but we planted our garlic in these beds. So we will have a harvest of garlic from these beds this year. And then after we get this high tunnel up, I do want to do an exterior row to be able to plant in right next to this high tunnel. The sun comes from this direction, and so that should be just fine. Lastly, I left some pages to journal in. This is just kind of a free-for-all, writing down what happened during the week, what problems I ran into, solutions that I came up with, whatever I want to write about, the weather, how the weather was, those kind of things. I think what I will do is journal on a weekly basis, have the week up here and the dates, and then what kind of happened. And I don't know if I'll take up a whole page, half a page, 2 pages. We'll just kind of see. But then this gives me something to go back to next year in reference. So if I'm coming up on the week of June 15th, then I can look at June 15th from the previous year and see what happened, see what I might run into, and the like. So I just think it's going to be helpful, and maybe as I go along, I might find a way to organize it better, but this is kind of my starting point. Well, friends, I hope that was helpful for you to see how I'm going to track things, what things I want to track, and I hope you can implement something similar with your gardening. This will be video 1 of 3, and I'm going to take you along with me on making that list of items that I want to preserve, and then translating it to how many seeds and of what kind we need to start. And then I will also take you along on getting my garden planned out. Now I did already fill out a garden plan, but obviously, as I explained earlier with the high tunnel situation, we're gonna have to pivot and replan that just in case we can't have that high tunnel up and ready to grow in. I'm erring on the side of caution with that. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and share it with others so we can get it out to as many as we can. And if you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to subscribe and stick around. So we hope you have a great day, friend, and we'll see you next time.